7 days, 800 kilometers and over 20,000 meters of climbing. The Haute Route Alpes isn't just a ride, it's the ultimate test to the most legendary cols of the French Alps. From Megève all the way to the coast in Nice, every pedal stroke is earned and every summit is a battle. This is where we get to ride like pros, through a journey that transforms every rider who dares to take it on. This is my story.
Well, we've made it to the final stage of the 7-day Haute Route Alps, and we finish in Nice with an uphill time trial, or a hill climb, if that's what you want to call it. And as former British hill climb champion, and now third place on the Saclobra leaderboard, I was in my element with this one. I was so motivated for this time trial, and I want to take you through the emotions, I want to take you through the day, I want to take you through the effort, and importantly, the pacing strategy that I adopted, and whether or not that was the reason why I was able to perform as well as I did in this time trial. So let's take a bit of a step back. The general classification is all but sewn up at this point. If anything, this time trial is more of a procession. For me, I'm now sitting second overall. I can't claw back the 7 minutes to first place at this point, and actually I'm leading my age category, which is really nice. But I really wanted to go out with a bang, and I really wanted to win this hill climb, or this uphill time trial. The Col d'Ez is a 10 kilometer, give or take, 5% climb. It's pretty irregular though. It's a steep first section, then it shallows off, and then it gradually pulls to the very top. And the Tour de France, I've raced up here numerous times, Paris-Nice too, sometimes from different directions, but Warren Barguil has the KOM of the side that we did, and as you can see from Strava, I did manage to pull out a pretty good ride, coming in the top 20 out of 20,000 people that have raced up this climb. So let's take you through the day. We started in the event village. Now from there, we actually rode down an official start ramp, but that wasn't the official start. That's a bit confusing, but let me take you through it. So the last few riders would set off 3 minutes apart, but the majority of the other riders would set off 20 to 30 seconds apart along the cycle path, and eventually turn left to go into the streets before we take a right onto the actual climb of the Col d'Ez. This is where the segment would officially start, and then obviously finish at the very top. So when I hit the bottom of the Col d'Ez, I was going to be fully committed to the first 3.5 kilometers. I was in the big ring, there was nowhere to go, there was a headwind, and I was just going to push as hard as I could to get to the first flat section of this climb. Now, before the start, I got talking to a couple of riders individually who came up to me looking for a bit of advice on how to pace this climb. They asked me what I was going to do, and I had to preface my answer with a little bit of a caution, because my strategy was going to be a positive split, meaning I start off hard and I gradually fade off towards the end. And for a lot of people, they were quite surprised to hear this, and I said it's a very risky move because you really don't know how much you're going to be capable of pushing, and you don't want to fade off too much towards the end. Otherwise, it kind of defeats the point of trying to adopt this pacing strategy. Hence why for 99% of people, the correct pacing strategy is nearly always to ride easier at the start and gradually build your way through it and finish strong at the end. The only problem is with this climb is that the steepest, longest section is the first 3.5 to 4 kilometers. After that, you have a flat section, and then it just gradually pulls before you flatten off to the finish. And I was told it was very fast to the top as well. The last maybe kilometer, you're doing pretty close to 50 kilometers per hour. So if you save anything for that top section, you've saved too much, and you're not going to be able to go much faster than if you were to spend more power on the steeper sections further down the climb. Now, through experience, I can say that one of the simplest ways you can find out the best way to pace a climb is to look at someone's speed graph from doing the climb previously. If you can see obvious places where the speed drops and where the speed increases, well, that gives you a really good idea already as to where you should be distributing your power. The first 3.5 kilometers, I really pushed myself quite hard. I knew I was going to put myself close to, if not over, the red line. 370 watts for nearly 9 minutes yielded 1700 VAM. That was my climbing speed, or 24 kilometers per hour. Now, as I was getting to the top of this first section, I caught two riders in front of me who were actually third and fourth in the general classification. I was quite surprised to see them, to be honest, because they did set off a good few minutes before me, but then they might have got caught up in traffic before the actual segment started. So I didn't really read too much into it, but it was really good to have some carrots in front of me to chase rather than just an open road. Another reason why this climb suits me is because there was a headwind in this first section, and I like to stay seated when I climb as much as possible. And so aerodynamically, I'm probably punching a much smaller hole through the wind up this first section of the climb, and I'm moving at 24 kilometers an hour. So it does make a difference versus a rider that likes to stand a lot. I noticed that the race leader, Fabio, throughout the week does like to stand when he climbs, and I figured that this might help in the first section of the climb, or at least help me. Getting to the first flat section then, and this was about 2 kilometers at about 3%, although you definitely pick up quite a bit of speed in the first section, where it almost seems like you're going slightly downhill. I backed off quite a lot here. I didn't really give myself a power target, but instead I just went off on feel. And I tried to just let my heart rate and my breathing settle ever so slightly. You don't really recover in theory here, but you're just giving yourself, that moment where your brain can switch off a tiny bit, and it does make a massive difference, especially if you're going into another section that's going to be quite hard. You're kind of just getting a little bit of mental recovery more than anything, and that actually plays a big part in this. Now, if any World Tour teams want to get in touch with me, Dan Bingham does aerodynamic work and Alex Dowsett, and maybe I can do some hill climb pacing work with Tali Pikachu. Oh, as if he needs it. So we hit the next portion of the climb, which is about 4 kilometers, but averages just 4%. Now, this includes the last flat section, but as you can see by the speed towards the end, it really just goes through the roof. And this is what I mean by, saving too much for the finish, because if you have, and you start to really push your power towards the end, you're not going to be doing much more speed, really, for, the amount of effort you're putting in. Versus, investing it further down where the gradient's steeper and you're on that section of gradient for a lot longer. I feel like I'm a broken record at this point. Those of you who've been following this channel for a while or seen any of my hill climb videos, you'll know what I'm talking about. As you can see, I'm really starting to fade off at this point, and emotionally, I am actually going into a little bit of a panic, because it does feel like I'm dropping off the edge of a cliff. But I do have to have, during that moment, some trust in that what I'm doing is actually probably the best way to pace this climb, based on the headwind, the steep first section, the shallow middle gradient section. It sounds cliche, but I just had to trust the process. And to be honest, the finish line came up to me really quickly, much quicker than I expected, and I crossed the line, and I checked the results as soon as possible, and I could see that I'd won the event by almost a whole minute. Now, that surprised me quite a lot, mainly because over the whole week, myself and the leader, Fabio, who was climbing exceptionally all week, we were virtually fairly close on long climbs. We were about a minute, plus or minus. Over climbs are about 45 minutes to an hour long. And for me to go a minute faster on just a 20-minute climb, or maybe slightly less than that when you consider some of it was fairly flat. But then I looked at where I gained all that time using the Strava comparison tool, and it becomes obvious that I gained it all in the first 4 to 5 kilometers. Basically where I just went as hard as I could with the positive split. That's where I gained the majority of the time. For the rest of the time trial, we're pretty much even, although I do start to lose a couple of seconds here or there. So I was really chuffed to come away and win the hill climb, the uphill time trial. It really made my trip, I've got to be honest. It was a great location to finish in Nice, but I have to take my hat off to the event, the organisation, you know, the logistics, even the marshals out on the road, and you know, the people driving the event, cars and vehicles. They were really bang on. I have to give it to them, and all the people that rode the event as well. Also, a special thanks to Alps Cycles for getting me out of the Stuck a couple of times. You know, they're really good friends of mine, and you should definitely check them out if you're looking for a tour operator for any event next year in Europe. Also, I want to give a special thanks to the riders. Everyone that won, you know, obviously age category awards, but certainly like every single person that signed up and attempted and wanted to complete this event. We were talking during the week about how, like, not even in pro racing do you have like 6 or 7 consecutive high mountain stages. Usually, like, even in the Criterium du Dauphiné, you'd have just the last 3 days would be high mountains. You know, usually you have a sprint day in there, so it's like a transition stage. Like, you don't usually get that much concentrated high intensity as you did like we did in the Haute Route. And I wanted to give a very special mention as well to my roomie for the week. Gilles was my roomie. He was also the Lanterne Rouge for the event. So his job is to basically ride around at the back with the people who are at the back and look after them through the day. And it was quite funny, the contrast, because we would get back to the hotel each evening and I'd be sharing stories from the front of the event and he'd be sharing stories from the back of the event. And he would also tell me about this one guy, Jan from Germany, who, you know, has obviously, it's a big deal for him to be at the event for many reasons, which, you know, I won't go into on this video, but, you know, it was incredibly awesome for him to be at the event. He had a standing ovation when he collected his award at the end, you know, for, yes, being the Lanterne Rouge, but for not once getting inside the broom wagon. He fought through every single stage and just never gave up, you know. And Gilles told me stories about him, you know, riding at the back and suffering and going through his moments, just like we all did, but we all have our moments at different times and for different reasons. And we all do these things for different reasons, you know. And I think it was really inspiring to see him complete the event, and with the courage that he showed as well to complete the event. So you had to be there, but massive respect. And yeah, it was awesome to share the week with everybody and to meet everybody as well. They came up to me and said that they loved the videos, loved the channel. That is greatly appreciated for all the time and effort I put into it. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.